Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Welcome to our panel presentation. My name is Emily Beira. I'm joined today with Haley Morris and Sean McGrath. Our panel presentation title is Keep It Local, Gunnison Producers Fostering Community Health. The Gunnison Valley has an extensive and vibrant local food scene. The 17,000 roughly county residents are supported by our producers who utilize innovative techniques to raise livestock and grow produce to support us in this region's really rough climate.
Although the Gunnison Valley has a large community of producers contributing to a great source of local food, there are still a lot of factors that threaten sustainable yields currently and into the future. Most notably, the agricultural sector is directly impacted by the negative effects brought on by climate change. According to the IPCC, global average temperature increases of 2 degrees Celsius, which we are on track to exceed, will increase extreme agricultural droughts by 200% and decrease suitable agricultural lands 10% by 2050. In addition, the remoteness of the Gunnison Valley poses another threat to sustainable food transportation during the average of 300 days a year, where it's not necessarily suitable for local food production. For example, as climate change increases the occurrence of extreme weather events, extreme weather events, supply disruptions such as closed roads threaten the transportation of reliable, fresh, and healthy food to the community. These threats will negatively impact livelihoods as producer incomes decrease and food security decreases for consumers.
There's a few amazing food security programs here in the Valley. There's two food pantries. There's SNAP that's accepted at most of the local grocery stores. There's a basic needs working group, and there's a backyard harvest program, which delivers a box of produce to participants on a weekly basis. There is a Cooking Matters course, and then there's a local Gardeners Network, and the last three mentioned are all actually Mountain Roots programs.
While the Gunnison Valley is making great strides in addressing food security issues, there is a need to intensify and strengthen these efforts through systems-based approaches to achieve successful climate resilience. According to the IPCC, agroecological farming has the potential to improve ecological health along with social and economic well-being. These benefits include improved food security and nutrition by increasing access to healthy and diverse diets and protecting incomes for food producers through increased land productivity. Each of our projects takes a unique approach to improve agricultural productivity and accessibility in the Gunnison Valley.
In my project, we will start at the ground level and explore how different management tools used to address soil health can help rancher resilience in the face of climate change and improve soil ecosystem services such as carbon storage.
My project involved renovating a community garden with the help of Gunnison Parks and Rec and Mountain Roots members. And then we partnered with local producers in the Valley to integrate their produce into the Senior Meals Program to increase food security among low-income older adults in Gunnison.
My project focuses on increasing accessibility and education to all the produce that all these amazing people grow, and getting that food to low-income and vulnerable groups of people. And now I will pass it on to Sean, and we'll talk about how our projects address agricultural productivity and accessibility to all this amazing stuff here.
Hi, everybody. So my name is Sean McGrath, and I'll be talking to you about my master's research looking at gunny gold biosolid compost and how it can help with climate adaptation and mitigation. So as we just mentioned, climate change threatens agriculture by increasing the intensity of droughts. And even here in Gunnison County, we can see how drought is becoming increasingly common. And in just a snapshot in time during the summer of 2021, when I was in the field doing data collection, nearly 100% of the county was in severe drought, and over 23% of the county was in extreme drought. And this is important to Gunnison because ranching, which contributes upwards of $13 million annually to the local economy, is directly impacted by these droughts because decreases in forage quality and quantity are seen here just in the first category of drought, which we are consistently above. And so there's been a lot more research happening in different ecosystems, looking at how soil amendments such as compost can be used to improve rancher resilience by targeting a few specific things. And specifically in one meta-analysis that averaged over 700 studies, found an average increase of 11% in soil moisture and 43% increase in plant productivity when you add soil amendments to the range. And in addition, they found a co-benefit of increased carbon storage in the soil of an average of a 34% increase in carbon stocks, but more on that co-benefit later. And so in the summer of 2019, MEM alum Alexa Cooper saw a need to address these increasing droughts in Gunnison County and saw that there was a lot of other amazing research going on. And so she was curious if those same benefits would be seen in a semi-arid environment such as Gunnison, Colorado. So with Dr. Jenny DeMarco, they set up a split plot design at 3 rangelands at Parker Pastures, Cold Harbor Institute, and Matthew Ozip's property, which we called Wiley Lane. And they added 2 inches of gunny gold biosolid compost to the treated plots. And this is when I had the pleasure of joining this project as an undergraduate intern. And exactly 2 years ago, I got to listen to Alexa present her project and share her amazing findings, such as significant increases in moisture and plant productivity. And even though she found all of these amazing findings, I was still left with a lot of my own questions, which propelled me into continuing this research for my graduate school journey. So my first objective involved seeing that most current soil amendment research is only on a very short time scale of typically 1 to 3 years. So I wanted to help contribute to this research being a longer term research to look at how the long-term impacts of a one-time application of compost. And so I measured a lot of the same metrics as Alexa, including bi-weekly field soil measurements, plant species composition in June, and I took soil samples in September, which I used to look at bulk density, pH, gravimetric soil moisture, organic matter, and eventually carbon. And the most notable result from that monitoring was the significant results that we saw at 2 of our 3 sites year 1. So on the top there is year 1 in 2019. And then this is the data that I collected down here in 2021. And specifically at Wiley Lane, where we saw a significant increase in moisture the first year, the treatment and control plots were nearly indiscernible by year 3 in soil moisture. As you can barely even tell, there's 2 lines on that plot. And then at Parker Pastures, we did still see a slight trend of an increased soil moisture in our treated plots, but that trend was no longer significant as in year 1. And then at Cold Harbor, we actually saw that our control plots had higher soil moisture than our treated plots year 3. And I attribute this to their closer proximity to the Tomichi Creek and the respective water table. But I think that actually just makes the year 1 results that much more impressive, since obviously those control plots are wetter at Cold Harbor. So moving on to my second objective, we wanted to monitor plant biomass. So I wanted to create these really cool equations that can relate plant species composition to biomass. So that way we can estimate biomass without having to destructively harvest that biomass every single year. So the way that I did that is with this quadrat, about 20 times outside of the research plots at Cold Harbor, I measured plant species composition in that quadrat, and then all of the live biomass within the quadrat was harvested, separated based on species, dried, and then weighed. And so then what that gave me was for each species at the Cold Harbor site, I was given 20 data points with a for 1% composition, for like when there's like 20% meadow foxtail, there's also like 20 grams of meadow foxtail. So I put all those 20 points onto this graph that you see back here, and then I made a line of best fit, or R made the line of best fit for me. And that equation of that line is that cool allometric equation that you can use now instead of harvesting biomass. And for meadow foxtail, percent composition explained 88% of the variation in biomass. And for Baltic rush, percent composition explained 85% of the variance in biomass. And so I found this to be very successful. And so I felt very confident using these equations to now estimate the biomass within the research plots at Cold Harbor. And so unfortunately, the significant results that we saw in year 1 of over a 100% increase in biomass was gone, like completely by year 3. And this could be a few different things going on. One, it could be that also that decrease in soil moisture we saw. We also had some anecdotal evidence from the ranchers that the cattle prefer to graze the compost treated sites over the control sites, potentially due to quality. So that could be happening here, or the compost maybe has like washed away since it's ditch irrigated. But we did still see some compost there, so hopefully that's not what's happening. And then moving on to my third objective, and I wanted to look at the climate mitigation potential of compost applications on rangelands by helping to see if it'll help take that carbon out of the atmosphere and incorporate it and store it into the soil. So we remember this diagram from earlier in my presentation, and I'll visually simplify it to look at just the carbon cycle aspect of it. And so as plants photosynthesize and take carbon out of the atmosphere, that carbon is now within the plant matter, and that gets incorporated into the soil through the roots. And when that plant dies, and then the carbon is in the soil in the form of organic matter. And then that organic matter is also exposed to these microorganisms now that can eat that, and it'll release some of the carbon back into the atmosphere through soil respiration, or it'll also help some of that soil or some of that carbon get incorporated into soil aggregates and deeper into the soil profile. So in that sense, soil carbon storage is not uniform in the entire soil profile, but actually, is not uniform. And so I processed my soils based with this method called density fractionation that separates your soil based on its fraction. And those different soil carbon pools or fractions have their respective properties and carbon storage potential. And some research uses different fractions, but I looked at the light particulate organic matter fraction and the heavy fraction. And so initially, we'll see that there's an increase ideally in carbon in the light fraction, as that's kind of how it has to begin its journey in the soil profile as organic matter. But ideally, we'll see that through that the carbon will, or that the compost will actually be helping that carbon get incorporated into the heavy fraction, which is more ideal for climate mitigation, as carbon can be in the heavy fraction for hundreds to thousands of years and only in the light fraction for like 3 to 5 or 10 years. So unfortunately, the EcoCore lab sent me my carbon data literally yesterday. And so I spent some time on R last night trying to analyze it to talk to you all about it today, but I thought that if I rushed the analysis, I wouldn't be able to share the exact story that we're seeing. So I don't have that data for you guys today, but I'm hoping it'll be the more exciting of results of my study. And so for implications for ranchers, even though we're seeing that those direct impacts seem to be diminishing by year 3, I still think that there's a lot of research that we can consider before we totally give up on soil amendment use for rancher resilience. Also, potentially, if carbon storage really is improving with soil amendments, then maybe policy can be implemented to incentivize landowners that way. Finally, I just want to thank my dad first and foremost for supporting me financially and emotionally through my entire academic journey. For my funding sources, the Margie and John Haley Environmental Project Fund and the School of Graduate Studies. Alexa Cooper for initiating this research and being a great friend and mentor. Dr. Jenny DeMarco for being my community sponsor, sharing her love and appreciation for soil with me, and also financially supporting this project. Dr. Ricardo Vasquez Perales for being so willing to be my mentor halfway through my graduate program. Daniel Carr, who was my intern last fall semester, and all the other students here at Western and Southwestern University that helped along the way. Thank you. And does anyone have questions? Yeah, I definitely, that was something
Can
that.
you repeat the question?
Oh, yeah.
Please?
Oh, yes. The question was, have I ever been interested in looking at agroforestry for helping with water retention? And was grazing the second question part of that? And no, I didn't consider it deeply. I definitely was interested in it. It was something that my first semester here, I got to go and see, now I can't think of his name, Al Gore, speak at this luncheon, and he was talking a lot about that. And I remember talking to Dr. John Hausdorfer on the drive back about it and being really passionate and interested about that, and possibly going towards that direction for my project. But honestly, I took the slightly more easy route and just hopped on this project that was already a thing. But I think that definitely is a good option.
Shaun, we have a question from our Zoom audience.
Okay.
Yeah, and this is Matthew Eshet, and he says, do you see how this research may be continued at Cold Harbor with compost or biochar?
Yes, so Dr. Jenny DeMarco will actually be continuing research on all of these sites, also continuing to monitor the research. And I think, Matthew, you are going to be continuing it with biochar at Cold Harbor. So it will be happening. So, and I think that was definitely one of my next steps was, or one of my suggestions was that So maybe this biosolid compost is not the best option, but there are other soil amendment options. So by maybe if we add some treatment plots with varying treatments, whether we reapply biosolid like every other year, we do biochar and biosolids, which I don't think would be super like ideal, or we do more biosolid all at once, or like lots of different options. But I think biochar would be a cool one for sure.
Yeah, we are going to do a good design for that. Yeah,
Yes,
thank
good,
you very
good.
much. And please.
Yeah, so the question was if I'm aware of other research taking place in similar environments, and if the results are similar or different. And initially, when I got involved in this research, I was more aware of the research that was going on in more wet Mediterranean environments, such as the Marin Carbon Project in Marin County, California. But in February of this year, I had the opportunity to go to Albuquerque, New Mexico, to the Society of Range Management annual conference. And there is when I really became aware, or there a lot of people came up to me to talk to me about my research, because there is a lot of similar research taking place in other dry environments. And then as I was writing my discussion for my manuscript, which was my main deliverable, I did realize more in the research that this has taken place in dry environments, and the results have typically been less, the margin of success, if that's the right way to say it, has been smaller in dry environments. So I think it really is maybe leaning towards compost being better for like Mediterranean and wetter environments, and not necessarily for dry environments for sure. So I think there is short answer, and it is similar results.
Yeah, good. And if you invite your next panelist.
Yes, and now I'm so excited to invite Haley up to share with us her research.
Okay, my name is Haley Morris, and the title of my presentation is Promoting Food Security Among the Elder Community in Gunnison. So I served as an AmeriCorps member with the Gunnison Community Senior Center at the City of Gunnison, and this was the first year that this project was implemented, which means that I had a new role to fill and came with a lot of opportunities and also a couple challenges that I navigated along the way. This garden is located at the Gunnison Community Center, and it was established by Holly Kahn in 2011. She's the executive director of Mountain Roots. This garden housed one of the first youth garden education programs in Gunnison and led to the development of the Farm to School program. And as that started to grow more, they started to use different spaces. And so this garden wasn't used as much and became dormant over time. And so Holly Kahn and my community sponsor, Elizabeth Gillis, and also the coordinator of the Gunnison Senior Center partnered together to get this garden functioning again and to renovate it and to source this produce into the senior meals program at the Gunnison Community Center. And this is important as 1 in 8 rural older adults in Colorado face hunger. And as cost of living continues to rise at a rate of 1.45% annually. That's making it harder to put food on the table. And so that's where this project comes in. So in terms of the planning phase for about the first month from April of 2021 to May of 2021, I worked on a project management plan and a budget, which I shaped with Holly Kahn, Elizabeth Gillis, and also Hannah Reichman, another AmeriCorps member who I worked really closely with in the garden. And Hannah and I also created a farm plan or a garden plan to figure out the layout of the garden. And we worked with the Gunnison Parks and Recreation, and they helped us tremendously getting this up and running again, and providing different resources and materials for us throughout the growing season. So a big aspect of my project was engaging the community in the garden. And we did this through garden work days, workshops, and big events. And so we had 15 garden work days throughout the growing season, so almost one every week. And at these garden work days, we harvested, watered, weeded, did anything that needed to be done in the garden. And while we centered a lot of the work days around the older adult community, we also partnered with the summer camp at the city of Gunnison to promote intergenerational gardening experiences, which was really special to be a part of. And then we had 3 workshops throughout the season. So the first one was I led, it was a composting workshop. And then we had one that Holly Halter led, who's an amazing artist in Gunnison. And this workshop was centered around upcycled flower making things. So we put the flowers, if anyone's been to that garden, around the fence, and also people got to take them home. And then we also had a workshop led by Jan Schieffer, who did a seed saving workshop. And then our celebrations, our first one was on May 20th, where we welcomed the community into the garden space for the first time after renovating it. And that had such a big turnout and was really exciting. And then we had a celebration in July to welcome the older adult community back into the Gunnison Community Senior Center. From March of 2020 until July of 2021, they had their meals delivered to their homes due to COVID. And so they didn't get to eat together as a community. And so July marked the beginning of getting to see each other again and eat together again, which was very special. And then we also had a celebration in October to celebrate all of the produce that we grew in the garden and put the beds to rest. Another aspect of my project was to help with the management of the Senior Meals program. And so every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, we fed over 100 older adults, either by delivering meals to them if they didn't feel like they could eat in person, or eating together as a community. And then a few big things that I did was coordinating meal orders, supporting volunteers, and providing outreach to the older adult community on exciting things coming up or changes happening. And then this is probably my favorite aspect of the project, was getting to build relationships and trust within the community. These are just a few of the Gunnison community senior members who are very special to me. And I just am amazed how a lot of them faced a lot of struggles, whether it be through lack of transportation, health issues, lack of access to nutritious food, or many other different things that they faced. And they still showed up happy to be there. And it was just incredibly inspiring. And I'm really happy that I got to be a part of that. So also there were a couple of special projects that I worked on that were a little bit different from the day-to-day things that I did. So one was a cost analysis. So I calculated how much money we spent on frozen and canned fruits and vegetables and meat through Cisco, and then also calculated how much it would cost to get fresh fruit and vegetables and meat here in Gunnison, and just to figure out if it would be feasible to start sourcing the local foods into the senior meals program and move away from Cisco. And then I also was awarded the Haley grant, and I'm very thankful for that. And that money went towards purchasing materials to build 5 ADA accessible raised garden beds in the garden. And those are not yet implemented, but hopefully will be here pretty soon. And then in terms of next steps, this project is going to be handed over to Mountain Roots, the food security team. And there's no longer going to be a AmeriCorps member with the Gunnison Community Senior Center, but the older adult community is still going to be engaged in this garden. And then a challenge that we faced throughout the growing season was getting the older adult community to keep coming back to the garden. And a lot of them, you know, had physical barriers getting down on the ground and gardening. And then some of them were like, I'm retired and I don't want to work anymore. Like they associated vegetable gardening with work, which is totally fair. And but what I thought was awesome was a lot of them said that they actually love flower gardening because it's beautiful and peaceful and just more fun all around. And so I think that is going to be something that's going to be more incorporated into this garden. There's going to be a lot more color in there, which is exciting. And then I have a lot of thank yous to extend. Micah Russell was my mentor and he supported me throughout this whole process. Elizabeth Gillis, my community sponsor, Lindy Kenlin, Hannah Reichman, and Holly Kahn with Mountain Roots, Jared Bessaker, the crew lead at Gunnison Parks and Rec, and then his crew, like I said earlier, they were incremental in this process. Dan Vollendorf, the director at Gunnison Parks and Recreation, City of Gunnison staff, Margie and John Haley, and then of course all our peers and faculty and staff. Thank you so much. Questions? So she asked if it is feasible between the cost analysis to implement local produce. And I did the calculations, but then I handed it off to Elizabeth. And so I think she's going to kind of figure that out. So I actually am not sure on that. Good question though. Anjanette. Thank you. Yeah, so that's what so Anjanette asked if there is a plan to put raised beds in. So that's what the Haley grant is being used for, is to build the 5 raised garden beds. And 3 of them are going to be 2 feet tall, so you can sit and garden. And then 2 of them are going to be 3 feet tall, so you can stand and garden. What was the second part of that question? Sorry, the irrigation. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So the question was it's a short growing season in Gunnison. And so she was wondering if we use permaculture practices and geodomes, which actually am not familiar with geodomes. Maybe I should be, but we did use permaculture practices. We use like regenerative agriculture practices and sustainable farming.
Micah would like to know which of your outreach and community integration techniques worked well and which didn't.
Good question, Micah. I think that what did work well was going to the community center almost every, 3 days a week and actually talking with these people and getting to know them and figuring out how to center different events and workshops and things around people and what they were interested in. I guess what didn't work was we did a lot of like advertising in the newspaper and flyers and stuff. And I just realized that that was not as beneficial. I think that just really talking to people and figuring out what they're interested in is really important.
Thanks. That's all the time we have for questions right now.
Hello, my name is Emily Vieira, and my project is called Designing and Piloting a Produce Prescription Program in the Gunnison Valley. My background is I'm really interested in localizing food systems, making them accessible and equitable for especially vulnerable people. And that's where this project was born from. I also have most of my experience working in the nonprofit sector. So I wanted to give that background to kind of inform how this project came about. Okay, my project sponsor is Mountain Roots Food Project. They are a really impactful nonprofit here based here in Gunnison. They're on a mission to cultivate a resilient food system in the Gunnison Valley. As some of our panels mentioned previously, they have 4 main pillars: regenerative farming, farm to school, food security, and food aggregation. Who here has heard of Mountain Roots? I know we just talked about it. Cool. Who here has direct experience working with them, volunteering, receiving services? Awesome. So if you look around, it just really goes to show how impactful they are for the people who live here in the Gunnison Valley. This area is gorgeous. There's a lot of beauty. There's endless recreational opportunities. And that easily masks, it's easy to overlook the problems here. A significant portion of county residents experience poverty, hunger, and poor health. Nationwide, chronic illness due to poor health is rampant because of our country's highly industrialized and processed food system. So in fact, 20% of our US healthcare costs is because of unhealthy diets. These stats illustrate the need for food insecurity relief efforts and increased healthy eating habits. Poverty, poor health, and food insecurity are interrelated, reinforcing feedback loops that cause a disruptive force in vulnerable individuals' lives. It must be noted that people of color and marginalized groups of people are disproportionately affected by these issues. So this is where my project comes in. This is one way to address this issue here in the Gunnison Valley by designing and piloting a produce prescription program. And these programs are exactly what they sound like. Healthcare providers prescribe produce to diet risk patients. And instead of giving them a prescription for a pill, they give them a prescription to eat healthy foods. And those, the prescription is subsidizing healthy foods. So it's increasing access to these foods that will help their health. These programs are unique because they involve a healthcare medical provider. So instead of SNAP, which is an amazing program, or some of these other food relief efforts, this is really unique because they do have a doctor there. We tend to listen to our doctors. So that's how these programs are unique. The goal is to improve patients' health through dietary changes by increasing access and affordability to fresh produce. In the last 2 years, especially, lots of research has grown and these programs have grown. And the research shows that they do increase health outcomes and food security along with produce intake. So that's what the research shows on these programs. Since 2020, there are 94 active produce prescription programs across the country. So now moving on to my project. In our graduate classes, we learned about the 4 phases of project management, which is defining, planning, doing, reviewing. I'll talk about the defining phase and then elaborate more on the other phases in the rest of the slides. So going back to my background with nonprofits, food security, I learned about Mountain Roots and what they did. And then I reached out to Holly Khan, the executive director of Mountain Roots last year, and told her I really wanted to work with them for my graduate project and asked her what are the needs. And then she told me that they're interested in doing a prescription program. So that's what we did. Me, Holly, and MJ Pickett, my faculty mentor, defined my project was going to be a produce prescription program. So now moving on to the planning phase of my project, MJ, Holly, and I determined the project objectives, create a produce prescription program design, and launch and close the pilot portion of the program. During this phase, I also experimented with various project management tools. Every project manager must find the tool best fit for them to help them successfully execute a project. I started off with Asana, which is an online project management platform, but I found that ultimately my planner works best for me. It's color coded. This is the month of September last year, which was a really busy month for me. So that was this phase, creating these 2 objectives and then creating how I'm going to manage the project. Now moving on to the doing phase of the project. The first objective, as mentioned, create a program design. One of the components of this objective was an information gathering phase. I reached out to some nonprofits that have a produce prescription program, and the goal was to learn about their operations, designs, things to know. So I interviewed with 3 total. Here I am with Chicago Botanic Gardens on top. And then on the bottom, I'm with Valley Food Partnership interviewing them. And then the 3rd interview is not here, but okay. So this information gathering phase inform the program design best fit for here in Mountain Roots and the area. So there's 5 steps. Patient referral, healthcare providers identify patients that would be a good fit for this program. And then after they're referred, Mountain Roots reaches out to them. They enroll them in the program and then enroll them in a nutrition education component, which is done through a Cooking Matters course. And it's cool that this, which is done through Mountain Roots, it's a free cooking course that teaches people how to cook healthy, low-cost meals. So it's cool how this program can be integrated with some of Mountain Roots' other programs. So, and then step 3, prescription receivable. The prescription is in the form of a voucher. And then step 4, participants redeem these vouchers at participating stores. And then step 5 is the data collection evaluation phase, where we analyze if the changes in participant behavior and habits. So those are the 5 steps of the program design. We're still in the doing phase of the project, but now it's objective 2, which is launching and closing the pilot portion. This was meant to test the design that you saw previously. And this had a few components to it. I reached out to various healthcare providers and grocery stores introducing the program, asking if they would like to be a part of it. If they expressed interest, I would give a formal presentation to them to introduce the program further, explain their roles in the successful functioning of this program. And in total, I gave 5 presentations. Peak Professionals and Gunnison Valley Health Family Medicine Clinic agreed to be a part of this. And then Wilder's Organic Market and Gunnison Vitamin Health Food Store agreed to accept these vouchers and then be reimbursed by Mountain Roots for the food costs. I want to say that Wilder's and Gunnison Vitamin Health was very intentionally picked because they partner with local producers and sell locally grown food. So going back to the local aspect of this, as we mentioned in previous panels, there's many economic, environmental, and social benefits of eating local food and supporting the people who grow it for us. So, and here I am with a participant in a Cooking Matters course. It was really fun talking to her. They recently moved to the area from Mexico, and it was really fun talking to her about her diet and the recipes that she cooked back home and asking her what foods she knows, and then introducing new foods and talking about how these new foods that are grown here can be integrated into the recipes that she knows and is familiar with. These are how the vouchers look. So my deliverable was a produce prescription program master plan, which is basically a business plan of this program. It talks about includes standard operating procedures, timeline of important tasks, stakeholder information, and recommendations for the future once this program is permanently implemented. So the reviewing phase, 2 healthcare providers participated in the pilot, 2 stores, 6 patients were referred, and 4 participated in the pilot. And one of our stakeholders said this is an equitable way to promote food security and wellness within our community. Here's my resources. And I want to thank Mountain Roots for really welcoming me. The food security team really took me in, and not only did I have my MEM family, but I had them too, which really helped me out when I moved here. Thank you to the marketing team too, because they helped me create most of the marketing material that I used in this program. I want to thank Hunger Free Colorado. Through a grant of theirs, this program was funded. And everyone else who I asked for the littlest thing of, I'm just so grateful to you guys and so grateful to be here. Thank you guys. questions? Okay, Jenny. Thank you. No, but we kind of quantify it. We give the vouchers are for $30 a week. Usually what I've seen, the amount is $20, but since we want to support local, which tends to be more expensive, we did 30. But no, there's really no way it's what the $30 can get them weekly. So thank you. Great question. And the question was, how do healthcare providers quantify the produce that they give? Shannon. Yeah, great question. Shannon asked about the patient privacy component of this program. I'm really excited that you asked that. And during my undergraduate classes, I was pursuing a medical career until I realized that I love growing food and feeding people, and I want to be a farmer. Oh, so sorry, Dad. But I learned I was actually a medical scribe in the hospital, and we learned a lot about patient privacy, HIPAA, which are the laws that protect patient information. So when I approached the medical providers, the first thing I said was HIPAA and patient privacy is the most important thing to me. And then one of the recommendations actually in the master plan was to maybe have a faxing component, because the protocol that I did during the pilot was, since patient information, like not even a name can be emailed, texted, or said over the phone, I would physically pick up the patient contact information. So that's one thing that we did during the pilot. I would physically go pick up the name and the contact information. And that's how we make sure that patient privacy is protected and all of the information is stored within Mountain Roots internally, so no one else is going to see that. And that's how we ensure that patient privacy, which I really take seriously, is protected. Thank you, Shannon. Any questions? Yes, Matthew. Thank you for that question. So Matthew asked about a recipe component. As we learned in previous panels, consumers love learning recipes to make with the produce that they get in like a CSA box and the backyard harvest box. And this is no different. So that's what the Cooking Matters course is for, to actually educate not only nutrition education, but how to prepare the foods that are grown here. Because the Gunnison Valley has very difficult climate and unique vegetables are grown here. So we really want to educate people on how to prepare the foods that are grown here. Thank you, Matthew.
Great. Now it's time to introduce our next panelist.
Questions for panel?
The full
Or
panel.
are we not doing that? Okay.
Never mind.
Thank you.
To start, we have a question for Haley. Sandy would like to know, are there efforts to make the delivered meals and pickup meals more environmentally friendly regarding packaging?
That has been a big issue. So for a little bit of context, the packaging is in like foam containers, styrofoam containers, and plastic bags. There is not any, they haven't made any steps that I know of right now to move away from that. Unfortunately, it's just a cost issue, but there has been less waste produced since more people are eating in the meal, in the, eating together again. But yeah, that has been a really big issue.
Yeah, so even though the question was if I saw a difference in the water years between year 1 and 3, and if that influenced my results, and even though the project was initiated to address drought, the first year that Alexa Cooper was looking at it actually ended up not really being a drought summer. And then the second year when an MS ecology, Alex looked at it, and then third year when I looked at the data, they were drought years. So I do think that that had something to do with it, especially after the conference that I went to for the Society for Range Management. Someone else was presenting her research, and she also found that there was significant increases in moisture only during the wetter years. So I think that's also why in wetter environments, the soil amendments might be the better option rather than in drier environments. Thank you for that. And Jeanette?
Really great question. And Jeanette asked about if healthcare providers explain the different benefits that different foods give them. And no, if they're educated and want to, they can, but that's really what the Cooking Matters course is for. So yeah, that's where it's done, through that education component that we do with them. Thank you. Josh.
Oh, that is a great question. Josh asked what my greatest intergenerational experience was. So there was one senior center member, Doreen, who came out every week. I think she only missed one time. And she used to be a master gardener, and she's just hilarious and amazing. And one day we were making these little, oh, I don't even know what you call them, like insect hotels. And she was like getting on the ground, like picking up all this stuff, like crawling around, helping this little like 5-year-old boy. And they were just working together and like learning from each other. And it was so fun just to watch that. And they spent like the whole hour together that we were in the garden. So Jess asked what we're doing next, and what was the first part of that question? Oh, one thing that we will take forward with our summer project. Well, in terms of what I'm doing next, currently I am nannying 1.5-year-old twins, and that's been really fun. So I plan to do that for a few more months and just kind of decompress and slowly start applying to jobs. But I do hope to work in food security here shortly. And then something that I'm going to take with me from this is, I think, just going back to the relationships that I built. I still talk with a lot of these people, even though I've been in Oregon and I live in Oregon. And I'm just really glad that I was able to build like lifelong relationships with these people.
I think one of the biggest lessons I'll take away from my project is that you really can and should ask people for help and reach out for those connections and even just friends with your cohort. Because I think I definitely shut myself down a lot over the last 2 years and was in my own little like bubble and thought I just had to do my project myself and figure it out. And I spent a lot of time teaching myself things, which was super important skill to use, but then also realizing that at the end of it all, maybe it could have been something so much more if I was better at including people in my ideas and connections. And excitingly, I just recently accepted a job at ACZ Laboratories. Thank you, thank you. I'm going to be a geochemistry lab analyst. So a lot of the same things I did with my master's project. So I'll be in a lab sieving hundreds of soil samples and pulverizing rocks and doing more science stuff. So even though I didn't get a science degree, so.
Yeah, and what I've taken from this is how much badly I want to take down big agriculture. And just really remembering how important food is to our overall spiritual, mental, physical health. And I'm chilling for now. Yeah, I'm gonna explore this beautiful area that I really couldn't have done in the last 2 years. And yeah, so that's what I'm doing. Yes, please, Matthew. It could be. Matthew asked about the connection between the senior meals and the produce prescription program. Yeah, it could definitely be paired, and we hope it will be in the future. Thank you.
I'm really glad we scheduled the food panel for after lunch this time. That was helpful. I appreciate that. And just want to congratulate all of you. You did such a fine job of situating the work that we do and why it's important and all of the many things that we get out of this experience in terms of understanding ourselves and the people we work with in our community. So I really, really appreciate that. Before we bestow the honors on this panel, I want to point out that a few of you this may be one of the first times you've been coming to our Western Campus MEM students, and maybe there are things you've missed out. I see a couple of you sporting your MEM trucker hats out there. But if you are an MEM student or an MS student and did not receive, for whatever reason, your hat, we do have those over here on the table, and we want to make sure that every one of our grads walks away with one of those. And if you're a friend of the program and want to grab an MEM sticker, we would love for you to have those. And we have some notebooks and other cool things there. So we just want to make sure that those of you that have been away from campus for so much have those little mementos to help you be connected to our campus community. And those of you who have lived in Gunnison for a while know that when UPS says it will deliver something next day or 2 day or 3 day around here, you better add a day or two onto that. And so despite our very best efforts to get something here before the community forum started, we just received it today. And so I'm taking a moment in the midst of this to tell all of our graduates that we want to present them with a commemorative pen from their experience here. And we do this for a couple of reasons. We really think a lot about the different things that you get. You get a fun trucker hat. We know the real meaningful things that you get aren't tangible. They aren't the things that you can actually carry with you. But we want you to have something that you use that's functional, that reminds you of the work that you do and the many things that connect you to each other. And we feel like that writing is part of that. Writing is part of what brings us together. Writing is, for me, it's how I think, it's how I process things. And hopefully this will be something that you can take with you, put on your desks, write in your journals, whatever work you're doing in the future, because it's still going to be work out there, and have that moment to be connected both to Western, to your Clark School community, and all of your fellow students in the Master of Science in Ecology, Master in Environmental Management programs. So I am pleased now to present their pens inscribed with their names to our panel and congratulate them on completing their degrees. So let's congratulate Emily Vieira. Sean McGrath. And Haley Morris, congratulations. Well done.
Okay, and next I'm really excited to present our next panel. It is Dimitra Biddle, Jenna Kelmser, Brian Wagenaar, and Angel Padilla. So let's give them a big round of applause.